I, for one, am an avid consumer of TED Talks, and I have rarely seen what we like to call
the TED duet.
But we stand here as two because the work that we do in our philosophy is fundamentally collaborative. So sorry to burst anyone's bubble, but contrary to recent political rhetoric, we do, in fact, need each other. This has been the case in all the success we've experienced, and is certainly true for the students for whom we speak today. So we stand here together because, along with
our visionary team,
our families,
and our own teachers and students,
we have developed something called United Classrooms. Now, we are teachers, and we developed United Classrooms to expand the potential for collaboration between students and teachers around the world, because in order for our kids to do their best work, they need each other. United Classrooms asks students to bring their unique voice to collaboration, and it also asks them to challenge status quo notions, as we will in a moment. Hit it.
Hi, my name is Zak, I like to sing and run.
My name is Leah, I like to draw for fun. We came from New York City to TED Talk with you and share something we made, it's called United Classrooms.
So if only I were better at the ukulele, but in our experience as teachers of trying to give our students the best education possible, we have actually questioned the most fundamental aspect of the education framework, and that is the four-walled classroom. Here is a classroom where communication is contained within four walls and where a floor and ceiling contains the sense of possibility for students and teachers alike. Now, here is the world that we are preparing them for, where communication follows much more dynamic patterns and where the possibilities are becoming more and more endless. But only if you know how to access them. And that's where education is supposed to come in. But we are educating people who are about to enter a world that is increasingly wall-less within four walls. So today we are going to grapple with the question, does this make sense? You know, as well as I do, that we can't go all Pink Floyd on our students and simply ask teachers to leave them students alone. Great song. But our students are currently running into walls that feel more and more and more insurmountable on their path to helping students become not just great test takers, but world changers. These four walls are not just brick and mortar walls like the walls we see around us today, but they include minimal contact with the world that they will someday lead. That's the first wall. The second wall, scripted curriculum that puts words in the mouths of teachers and steals creative liberties from our students. The third wall is a teacher-centered classroom that squelches opportunities to develop student expression and individuality. And the fourth wall is multiple choice assessments, which are the catalyst for all these other walls, but they also limit a lot of students' free choice. As a fifth grade teacher, I have learned quickly that my job is actually not just to impart knowledge to my students. My job is to nurture students. And we know from our own experience that every student is brilliant in their own way. Nurturing a child is not painting a yellow line down a single road and pushing that child across a predetermined finish line called success. Our children deserve to be guided along pathways of success as diverse as they are. To paraphrase Elizabeth Warren, a Harvard Law School professor running for a Senate seat in Massachusetts, no U.S. Department of Education, our students are not test scores. They are children. And children have wild imaginations, fearless dreams, boundless curiosity, and complex experiences. They hope, they create, they cry, they sing, they play, they struggle, they overcome, they love, and that matters.
So recently, Zak and I proposed one possible solution to this tragically restrictive educational environment that our students are floundering in. It's called United Classrooms, and here it is. Pretty cool, huh? So United Classrooms lists these restrictive walls off of the classroom and allows students to bring themselves to the learning process. As we speak, classrooms around the world, on every inhabitable continent, we're working on Antarctica, but penguins are pretty test-centered. So they're logging on and they're sharing ideas, they're making projects, they're asking hard questions, and they're making friendships with kids from countries that they've only ever read about. They're also making sure that they bring themselves to the learning experience.
Leah, I have a question for you. I've been reading in the news the last few weeks about this guy from America who made a pretty controversial video, and it sparked some violent protests in the Middle East. And I'm just trying to figure out for myself, should he be able to express himself even though it's controversial? What do you think about that?
I mean, that's a great question, but honestly, I'm not used to being asked questions like that in school, so I don't really know how to answer you, Zach.
Oh, well, I think maybe we should jump on United Classrooms and see what the rest of the students across the world are saying. Now, we put questions like this, the hard questions, on United Classrooms so that students across the world can engage in conversations and interact with perspectives that are not just in their four-walled classrooms, but that are across the world. This is a real conversation that is happening. These are two students, actually, from Community Voices Middle School. A transformational teacher named Mr. Porter wanted me to put this up because you can see from here the question that I posed to Leah is answered by Naomi as, yes, I think people should have the right to say whatever they want, and from Mackenzie as, I think it would be upsetting, no, that man should not have made the video. Now, these are two perspectives that should be heard, but not only do they get to engage with each other, but they get to engage with perspectives from a diverse array of communities. Now, from the classroom profile page on United Classrooms, students can interact with their teachers, their classmates, and classrooms across the world by exploring from that little plane feature. So you might be wondering how two young, ridiculous teachers with ukuleles put something like this, which was actually just an idea a year ago, into a reality. How did it become an expanding global network? So Leah, through her own drawings, will tell you our story.
Once upon a time, in two small New England mountain towns, two children were encouraged to explore and create and develop the character that it takes to change the world at school and at home. In 2008, they became teachers with Teach for America, and they realized that their own students didn't have the experiences that it took to understand themselves and the world around them. After that, in 2011, they went to Tanzania and taught kids from 13 different countries and realized the valuable lessons that these students learned from experiencing each other. And they so loved all of these students that they thought they should be able to learn from each other. But there were no pathways available to do so. So because they'd been taught to think creatively, they went to the beach with a notebook, chewed a pencil, and tried to figure out a solution. By April, they'd hatched the idea for United Classrooms and collaborated with a global team to actually build it. By June, they developed the kind of knowledge that cannot be instructed or imposed. They experienced the problem space and the solution by spending 50 days in a Toyota Yaris, driving across the country and sharing their idea with Teach for America teachers. By September 29th, a year had passed, and persistence had brought the notebook scribble to hundreds of classrooms around the world, including my own. So their students and the gaps that they had encountered, as well as the hope they found in United Classrooms, gave these two teachers purpose. The story of United Classrooms is a circle story because the idea and its journey to reality opens the possibility for kids who use it to also experience this process. From here on in the hands of transformational teachers who are willing to expand their practice and students hungry to experience the world, United Classrooms will open the opportunity for kids to experience and practice persistence, knowledge, collaboration, creativity, love, experience, and character, and become the kind of people who can tell the next cycle of this story.
Well told, Leah. Now, that was our story. Fortunately, our education included all of those ingredients that we need to break down walls and start to build solutions. But tragically, that is not on the agenda in most American classrooms today. I'm going to go out on a limb right now. I don't want to offend anyone, but I'm going to boil down most modern teacher training programs, professional developments for teachers, and new education policy into one short sentence. Your purpose as a teacher is to ensure that your students get high test scores. From what I can tell, that only gives one of the pillars of success that Leah talked about in our story, that's knowledge. But even then, true knowledge is pretty empty, I think we can all agree, without the others. I don't say this in a mocking tone. I say it in an honest tone, and I say it as a teacher with deep sadness. Because my teachers in my small town in Moultonborough, New Hampshire, when I was growing up, said something different. I don't know who trained them or what gave them their sense of purpose, but Miss Rivers, Mrs. Connell, Mrs. Flynn, Mrs. Moser, and Mr. Smith told me that I could be anything I wanted to be. They told me to be a teacher if you want, but don't stop there. Be the next Maria Montessori. They told me to be a preacher if I want, but don't stop there. Be the next Martin Luther King Jr. They told me you can even be a farmer if you want, but don't stop there. Be the next Cesar Chavez. You see, the email above, this is a real email, it shows you how I was trained to be a teacher just a few years ago. Use the assessment that the students will take at the beginning of the year, in which the government will use to decide whether or not you are a good enough teacher, and backwards plan. Yes, backwards plan. That means to know exactly what questions will be assessed on that year's test. Now, we're going to forget about field trips, experiments, and current events. That's one wall. We're going to make sure that every student, every teacher, and every student in the whole school are mindlessly speaking from the same scripted curriculum. That's a second wall. We're going to maximize the cramming of content by lecturing. That's another wall. And then finally, spend all of our precious classroom time ensuring that students will infallibly, at the end of the year, bubble in the right bubbles. Now I'm boxed in. Now, Leah and I are not here to claim that tests are inherently bad. Data is informative, and yes, comprehensive tests that ask students to demonstrate their thinking in the varied modalities in which thinking actually occurs can serve a child's best interest. I've never taken one of those tests, and I've never seen one of my students take one of those tests. Have you?
No, never.
For all of you doubters out there who need test scores to believe, here's a test score that might put your brakes on your race to the top. America's Creativity Index is in sharp decline for the first time in its 50-year history, especially with the current kindergarten through 6th graders. This is ironic or not so ironic because the kindergarten through 6th grade are the most affected by the test-centered approach due to the No Child Left Behind error. And what's worse is that childhood creativity correlates 3 times stronger to lifetime creativity than childhood IQ does to lifetime IQ. Effectively, what this means is that a slump in creativity among American school-aged children means a slump in creativity for a lifetime. And this, in our Great Recession brains, actually means a pretty gloomy outlook for our economy. Wouldn't you say? Especially considering that in a recent IBM poll of 1,500 CEOs, creativity was ranked the #1 leadership competency.
This concerns me every day in my classroom, and actually this week I asked my 3rd graders to make a list of the things that they could learn in school that would help to change the world. And this is what they answered. Now, these are really important skills, and I will make sure that they master these concepts. But if we're raising world changers, we're gonna have to make sure that there's more vision behind their goals than these very test-centered objectives.
I'm pretty sure all of us want our next generation to have an excellent education. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But an excellent education simply does not begin with drill and kill. An excellent education, like mine in Moultonborough, New Hampshire, actually began with my ability to dream, and then a decision to try after that. So I would actually propose that instead of backwards planning from an assessment that has almost nothing to do with your success in life, that we start to backwards plan from the lives of our greatest world changers. And so Leah, briefly, is going to backwards plan from one of my heroes' lives, Cesar Chavez.
So imagine it's late at night and I just finished picking pencils up off the floor and I'm lesson planning for the next day in my classroom. I'm sitting there and the janitor's trying to kick me out and I've got my Common Core standards, I've got my curriculum, and one thing that I would like to keep in mind is a hero, someone who's been able to change the world because of their education. So let me think about Cesar Chavez and what makes him extraordinary. Even after his death in 1993, his sense of purpose is still celebrated because of the lives that it touched. In the 60s and 70s, he showed perseverance by fasting in solidarity with nonviolent movements. And in 1962, his personal experience with the farm workers' toil allowed him to start the National Farm Workers Association. He was able to get those who suffered and those who perpetuated injustice to collaborate and protest. He used creative tactics to empower people with his message, and he had experienced the hardships of his people with his own back. His family had modeled love for those in need, and his life had developed the character that set him apart from those who were paralyzed by injustice.
Now, a classroom sealed by limited experiences and desperate to prove progress through numbers just doesn't have the nutrients that it takes to cultivate someone like Cesar Chavez. So the question we must ask ourselves is, what helped Mr. Chavez to learn to develop the qualities which allowed him to synthesize the experiences underneath his feet into a plan for justice and action? What took the ceiling off of his sense of possibility and gave him the courage time and time again to say, si se puede?
So meet one of the people that this idea affects the most. This is one of my students. She is in the 3rd grade in the Bronx, where I teach, and for the sake of this talk, let's call her Hope. So Hope is 8 years old. Hope is a first-generation American. Hope told me that her favorite hobbies are singing and dancing. She does not like white cheese being rushed or cats. Hope wants to be a lawyer when she grows up, and she wants to help the people that she sees on the streets to provide for their children. So Hope is one of the brightest students that I've ever taught. She's one of those kids who will work relentlessly towards whatever goal you put in front of her. But unfortunately, the goal that's been put in front of her for her entire educational career has been to score high on a test. Hope, like all children, has the potential to do more than just comply and perform. She could one day invent a different colored cheese if that's what she wants to do. Or she could create a jobs program for the people in her community. She could even be the first woman president of the United States, because Hope has the potential to be a world changer, as do all the other students in my class and yours if you're a teacher. The question that we're trying to reckon with here is, are we going to help her get there? So when I make lesson plans for Hope's class, I have to ask myself if I'm going to have them read a passage and answer a multiple choice quiz afterwards, or if we're going to dive into the biography of Cesar Chavez. Are we going to crack open our humanities textbook, or am I going to have them log on to United Classrooms and talk to other kids with diverse cultural perspectives? Are they going to do a science worksheet, or are we going to break out the beakers and pretend that we're Alexander Fleming? Hope has the opportunity to learn beyond her 4 classroom walls, and when she does this by going on field trips, doing experiments, planting a garden, going on United Classrooms, she not only strengthens her knowledge muscle, but also her character muscle, her love muscle, her creativity muscle, her collaboration muscle, her persistence muscle, and her purpose muscle. These are the same muscles that we've been developing as we've built and shared United Classrooms around the world, and the same ones that were flexed by Cesar Chavez as he scaled those steep walls of oppression.
So we're here as teachers tonight, just speaking about hope. Howard Zinn, my favorite historian, said that the presence of another human being is a powerful fact. Cesar Chavez and hope are powerful facts for us tonight. Let us open the walls of the classroom and provide our students the powerful fact of their fellow global citizens.
Our students will live the future of this planet. Will they be able to create it?
Or will they only be able to fill in the right bubbles to follow along? The answer to that question is actually our responsibility. Thank you.